the panel to Kevin for moderating and take it from here. Kevin?
Tēnā koe, Mr. HANDA, and all of your board members, to our other illustrious guests, and to my fellow panelists. And namaste and morena to all of you. And this is the first panel of the day. Looking forward to it. The theme, of course, for the conference, for the summit, is about collaborating to grow trade between our two countries. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. Soon you will have a chance to ask questions. And I'll also be inviting the panel to have a discussion amongst themselves as well. There is so much opportunity for India and New Zealand to collaborate, to grow trade between our countries, to grow sustainable businesses, and very importantly, to create satisfying jobs fit for the 21st century. We hear a lot about the future of work, and we think that there's a golden opportunity between our countries to pave a way for good jobs. So I'm very pleased. I'm so pleased, in fact, to be part of a discussion, a collaboration about how we do that today. History tells us that the Indian Ocean has for a long time been the crossroads of world trade. This was disrupted perhaps by the last 500 years with the growth of the European powers, but I think there's evidence which shows that the underlying forces of demography and geography and others are reasserting themselves. I wrote an article which the Herald published on Saturday, which you can Google, or if not, find on my LinkedIn page, about that topic, about how the Indian Ocean is becoming very fast one of the key poles of trade in the world. I just wanted to cover quickly some of the key points from that. Demography. So the world population is basically levelling off, counter to the predictions of many 10, 20, 30 years ago. The exception to that is around the Indian Ocean, where the last great expansion of world population is going to occur. So there's around about 2 billion people live around the Indian Ocean right now, and failing catastrophes and so forth, we know what's going to happen. And that is, by 2050, the population around the Indian Ocean will hit around 5 billion people. Africa's population alone is projected to grow from 1.1 billion to about 2.5 billion. And here's an extraordinary statistic. Ethiopia, which has around about 100 million people today, is projected to grow to 230 million people. That's an extraordinary number. Arab states will grow from around 260 million to about 400 million, and South Asia from around about 1.8 billion to about 2.3 billion. That's a massive expansion of the human population, and it's centred around the Indian Ocean. Economics. Well, we all know the region is rich in natural resources and, of course, in human capital, and that is going to expand. We've heard from some of our earlier speakers about India alone, where there's a growing middle class of young people. Regional trade went from US dollars 300 billion in 2003 to 1.2 trillion in 2012. That's a tripling of trade in a decade. And it hasn't stopped since then. An article in the April 2019 issue of the Journal of Asian Economic Integration suggests that the Indian Ocean economy will be about 20% of global GDP by 2025. That's very close. And GDP per person, a very important piece of data point, will almost double. So it's growing, and more people are being lifted out of poverty, and the middle class is growing. And of course, Goldman Sachs made their very famous prediction, and there's nothing that's occurring today which would suggest it's wrong, that India will have the largest economy in the world by 2050. Trade. So despite, though, the growing importance of India and the Indian Ocean, trade between India and New Zealand is low. So using some Stats New Zealand data, from 2015, year ending June, to 2019, New Zealand exported about $8.5 billion worth of goods and services to Australia, and 4 years later, 8.9. So that's a marginal increase. China, our exports went from 8.2 billion to 15.6 billion, pretty much double. Our exports to India went up 40%, but from 0.5 billion to 0.7 billion. The import side of the equation is roughly the same, a bit less for China, but otherwise roughly the same. So what does that mean? Well, what it's saying is that, sure, 40% increase in exports and imports between India and Australia, between India and New Zealand, but from a very low base. And also I'd note that the single largest category both ways is travel services. So like I heard the High Commissioner and others touch on, we're punching below our weight. The volume is minor for New Zealand and negligible for India. Regional collaboration. So both India and New Zealand think globally but need to act regionally as well. In New Zealand we hear a lot about APEC and the web of Asia Pacific regional bodies. We hear little or nothing about the growing web of regional bodies centred on the Indian Ocean. And that might be the fault of the media as much as it is the rest of us in this room, but the fact is it's not part of, or it's a minor part of the public narrative. The Indian Ocean Rim Association was founded in 1997 after Nelson Mandela visited India a couple of years prior to that. Its members include the 22 littoral states and 7 dialogue partners, including US, the UK, France, China. It includes Australia. It doesn't include New Zealand. Its role includes, it has a number of roles, but its role certainly includes promoting sustainable growth and freer flow of goods and services. Like APEC, it has a growing number of related bodies, like the Indian Ocean Rim Business Forum and new maritime agreements and so on. In 2015, IORA adopted the Blue Economy Declaration, seeking to sustainably harvest marine resources and other resources. Look, there's a debate about how successful that will be, but that's not the point. The point is that new bodies are emerging as the focus on the Indian Ocean intensifies. So one body may not fire up, another might fire up, but over time it's inevitable, and we are seeing a thickening of international bodies. I also note in passing that it's not just the Americans that don't talk about Asia Pacific so much anymore, they talk about the Indo-Pacific. Nearly finished. So the trade agreements, we've touched on RCEP and so forth. We hear about that, and it's plain, obviously, that New Zealand is committed to free trade. I'll be really interested to hear from our panellists about how they think that is going. To summarise, there's a lot going on. There are opportunities galore, and the big question is, are we collaborating sufficiently to grow trade between our two countries? We, in New Zealand, need to look west to grow our trade. And we need to collaborate with India and the Indian diaspora to do that. So thank you very much. My job now is to facilitate discussion amongst the panel and also just to facilitate questions and answers. We're a little bit behind time, as you know, and we will finish at 10:30. So can I please ask, if you ask a question, and we want lots of questions, please keep it short, to the point, make it a question, not a statement, and we'll, if you're able, if it makes sense, please direct the question to an individual. Thank you very much. So, because we're running slightly behind time, we have 20 minutes. So can I ask Priyanka, what are your thoughts about progress with the relationship between India and New Zealand, and if you have any thoughts around progress with free trade agreement?
Do you want me to go?
Kia ora koutou, namaste. Can I just also begin by thanking INZBC for the opportunity for all of us to be here, to have some of these important discussions, and to FICCI as well. I think I'm not going to delve too much into what the Minister covered, because I think that was quite a good or comprehensive groundwork of the importance of the relationship, which has been traversed quite a bit this morning as well, the economic and trade relationships, the government's economic priorities, and so on and so forth. The Minister also touched upon the trade relationship to some depth, so particularly in terms of RCEP, and I think I think it won't be remiss of me to say that we're all looking to RCEP in terms of a multilateral relationship with India. The FTA negotiations, as far as I'm aware, have been ongoing for a while now. I think we're into the 9th round of negotiations, if I'm not mistaken. And so that continues, but we're also looking to RCEP. And for me, it's quite heartening to hear the Minister say that we are looking to conclude by the end of the year. Of course, that depends also on, I guess, on the parts of India and China as well as part of those negotiations. So I might just leave it there for now.
Would anybody else like to comment? Okay, so questions from the floor. Yeah, sure. So, Your Excellency, you talked about ensuring that we get out of fancy hotel rooms and get out and around. Where are you planning on starting? I'm talking either geography, but also if you have a particular focus on particular sectors.
Well, thank you. When I referred to getting out of a particular place, I meant that we should be going to smaller towns. For instance, the business events do not take place outside Auckland. Wellington is hardly touched upon. So we will be working with INZBC to have maybe a smaller level, but we go across to Wellington, we go to Hamilton, we go to South Island, and engage with the business chambers. Fact of the matter is, not everybody is in Auckland. And sometimes for SMEs to come even to participate in a summit like this in Auckland, it may not be on his agenda. So this I found very useful in Mexico, where there are 31 states. Unless you get out of Mexico City, no one is going to come all the way to Mexico City to listen to you. So engaging with the regions is important, and that is a part of our action plan. Similarly, in case of New Zealand, if the interactions are beyond Mumbai or beyond Delhi, that helps. India has, around 30 states. So engagement with regions, engagement with states would be beneficial for both parties to bring a sense of business to the people.
Thank you. Judith, a question for you. So in New Zealand terms, Fonterra is a behemoth. And in New Zealand terms, India, population-wise, is a behemoth. How do you see the growth path? I mean, you told an outstanding story, and it's very exciting. How big can it be?
Well, I think, we haven't actually capped the number, but I think what I always focus on is, you're looking at the local production and you're looking at the demand. And for me to see the demand of an extra 82 billion litres of milk, 5 times what we currently make, and that's just the growth. There is plenty of room for us all to play here, I thoroughly believe, which is why we're supportive of getting an agreement up. And it's not about saying we'll play everywhere, but it's really about where do we have a right to win and to play and to partner. And for us, that's really in that kind of innovation, in the value add, which is really how, therefore, we then return the best that we can for New Zealand farmers. and thereby creating that real win-win partnership. So we see, we're not going after the 82 billion litres, but, where can we really play in that kind of premium provenance space where we can really bring not just product from here through our food service brand, but also how we can partner locally to bring our innovation that we, got a huge heritage of R&D in dairy.
Cool. Thanks very much. We have a question. We have roving microphones.
I just have a question to any of you who wants to answer. In order for any business to success in any country, you need cultural capital and you need capability of people. Do you think we are ready? Do you think we have enough cultural capital and capability of people at government level as well as at business level to operate bilaterally?
I'm happy to speak from a business level. Absolutely. Our JV has a local CEO that is who is a local that has got a great track record in the consumer business. We bring our know-how in terms of our food safety quality people, regularly visit the trade, the toll manufacturers that we're using there. So, but it absolutely is about understanding where your strengths are, what you bring to any partnership, and so that it is truly a win-win. It's not a win-lose, and you are not treading on each other's toes the whole time and trying to basically tell them what they're doing wrong and you're doing right, or vice versa. So really understanding what are the rules of engagement and who's bringing what to the party.
JASMEET, I was interested in your comments on that.
Just to add to your question, after spending 6 months or so, I've been doing a lot of back and forth in my headquarters due to my previous commitments and which are still going on. What I have realized here after working with Australians, definitely this is my first visit with Business Forum. I'm meeting for the first time. My observation after meeting few of the business community back in Australia, they want to explore more opportunities in terms of board exchange programs. What's going on inside, board meetings and how we can contribute sitting in Australia to help each other handholding in terms of knowledge exchange programs, which is definitely when it comes to India, we always say it's a complex market, but opportunities are huge. That's why we are talking about complexities as well. It's not about only Mumbai or Chennai or south of India. The larger portion of Indian, the Australian business community is engaged towards south of India or western. We have huge capability and capacity, sitting in north of India, deeper in eastern India as well, with few coal bilateral agreements which are still going on, etc., which are progressing. So I think the best of corporate affair capabilities and capacities we have in India, we can help developing those exchange program models. The I think largest chain of corporate affairs, regulatory affairs, corporate affairs experts we have in India. So answering back to your question of culture exchange, etc. I think that's the best way to kickstart. Maybe I'm new to this market. How we can jointly pick up this piece with the help of definitely His Excellency High Commissioner. Maybe we can work on this model. This is huge in India where we can develop exchange program. Thank you.
I'll add my 2 cents worth from a New Zealand perspective. But I think the answer to your question from my point of view is absolutely yes. And I think that's in fact where our strength lies. Because, and I say this because we live in an increasingly interdependent world or global environment that is driven by globalization, by the digital revolution, and really by people-to-people links. And that's where I feel as a nation, as a country, New Zealand can excel, because we have a large, vibrant, significant Indian New Zealand population here who have those capabilities, both in terms of the business world and the linkages of knowing how to do business in India, the wealth of languages, connections back to the home countries it's often referred to. And also, if you look at cultural capabilities from a soft power point of view or with a soft power lens, you're really looking at whether here in New Zealand we've got some of those universal values that attract others. And we do. Those principles of democracy, of fairness, of a rules-based order. I think that coupled with the fact that we have a strong, in this case, Indian Kiwi population, I would say that's one of our strongest assets.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's an outstanding description. Are there other questions? Oh, yeah, over there.
Excuse
If you
me.
just wait for the microphone, there's...
Good morning.
My question is to JASMEET Singh ji. Just asking whether we are looking to start anything as a FICCI body in New Zealand rather than through Australia, because if we have something here, the Kiwi business people can have stronger linkages with Indian business communities.
Since we have recently started from Australia, idea is to reach out this market up till Fiji. Based on commitments of business community, definitely I'll be the only one to start. Definitely we have to set up the entire team. So far, it is a kind of business model we have to develop. I'm starting with the FICCI Business Council in Australia, where the business community, those who are present in Australia, all across Australia, they will be on board in advisory committee, and we will be designing the agenda, annual agenda, and working on it. And based on the developments and outcomes, which will include the national forum we have to organize in Australia, bringing sector-specific knowledge, taking delegations, reports, etc. So all those boxes to be tick-marked, and definitely if we get such commitment here in New Zealand, I'm looking around for such opportunities as well. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Mr. Pardeshi, I quite like the idea of more collaboration between New Zealand and India, especially with tourism. Any plans to use successful and motivated Kiwi Indians to help you articulate the New Zealand brand to India? I say this because these are people who are passionate, who love New Zealand, and they might be much more powerful than having marketing strategies or advertising.
No, certainly we are going to use, as you mentioned, they are more experienced, they have wider awareness about the potential in this sector. Will be utilizing their services and their skill sets in enhancing the links between two countries. Yes. If you have any concrete suggestions, we can definitely speak during the coffee break.
Okay.
This is
sorry, there's been a person over here. We're waiting for a will.
Good morning. My question's for His Excellency. Going with the theme of collaborate, we know that New Zealand has quite a strong innovative startup ecosystem, and so does India. So do you have any action points within your the action points that you stated that focus on the startup culture of both the countries and bringing it together?
As you said, both countries have a strong ecosystem on startups. So now it's up to the business community if they have any concrete idea, if they have concrete plans. As the High Commissioner, we have to help them out. if they are looking at any particular sector in India, hand-holding and business matchmaking, we can help them. So if there's a concrete idea, if somebody is even looking at a particular sector, we would be there to help them out in giving them right information and put them in touch with the Indian partners.
This is a question for the High Commissioner. Considering the fact that there has been a code share agreement for the last 5 years between India and New Zealand, and it was encouraging to hear you say that you want to take that forward. One, what is the pitfalls which have happened and there has been no direct flights between India and New Zealand? And secondly, how do you plan to overcome them?
Well, we are pushing for it. A month back, there was a 10-member delegation from New Zealand which visited India, and they met higher functionaries and stakeholders. At the end of the day, some decisions are commercial decisions taken by the airlines. As a government representative, I can help them in coming together. We can facilitate meetings, but finally those decisions are managerial and operational decisions by the airlines. But we are hopeful, at least the discussions are going on, and that's a positive aspect about it.
I've got a question. Essentially, I came to New Zealand about 5 years back. I've been in investment banking back in India, and I've had an opportunity to interact with a lot of companies. The background of it is, one thing that we have seen in India over the 90s was how South Korean conglomerates really transformed themselves. Some of them were kind of SMEs in that country, but they really transformed themselves into proper multinationals on the back of Indian economy and the scale that they could hit on Indian economy. So I get the feeling that, I may be quite far from the truth, that the whole engagement that New Zealand and India is probably having is on the back of the large existing multinationals, which may not be so much of a value addition to India, and same way the other way around, because of the advantages that are there. Whereas the SMEs would be a good match because there are some niche technology providers in New Zealand, as well as good companies in India, the SMEs who may be interested in giving them that scale and giving them that Indian market access and turning them into multinationals. So is there any particular focus on that, kind of a New Zealand, India, South Korea model that worked vis-a-vis India, New Zealand?
Yeah, I'll just answer that. There are quite a few SMEs and medium-sized companies on both sides, India and New Zealand, who are doing a fair bit of trade with each other as well. So I think during the course of the day, you'll probably hear from many other businesses who will tell you how they've been doing it and how successfully they've been able to do it. So yeah, there is certainly a fair bit of that happening, and I totally agree there is a room for it to grow, a lot more companies to do so. But there are certainly a number of companies already doing that.
Thank you. So we've run out of time for more questions. Just to sum up, we hear a lot about cricket as part of one of the things that bind our countries. There is another sport peaking at the moment, of course. I chaired a rugby club for 6 years, and I coached junior rugby, and I coached a number of Kiwi Indian children. And our club certainly had senior Kiwi Indians playing in the senior club. So I'd like to make an offer that if we collaborate, then India perhaps can host the 2031 Rugby World Cup. And we'd love you to come second. Just to a couple of final comments. Thank you very much. Thank you for Samir and the council for inviting us to come along today. Thank you for all participating. Thank you each of the panelists for contributing. And one final comment from me is clearly an enormous enthusiasm to collaborate. And one of the strong themes that came through for me, both in the comments and from the questions, is about the importance of relationships. At the end of the day, we're all humans, and we'd like to feel comfortable with one another. So I think collaborating around that is perhaps a good place to start. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, panelists and speakers. May I now request Samir to please present mementos to the speakers and panelists, please.